I did the note taker last time as well because it helps me summarize rather than taking notes myself. But how's everything going? It's been a month since I've seen some of you guys. All is good? Nobody speaks of it first.
Yeah,
This is going on the
Maybe better,
recording.
but-
It'll be like I'm by myself, guys. No, I'm just kidding.
No, it's good.
Well, you know, there's two acronyms that remind me of how you opened the meeting, and you were talking about sales. One is ABS, the other is ABC.
Yep.
So the ABS, I think we're all doing in one way or another. I'm finding the latter is getting harder, not because I can't do it. It's just because people are just, the sales cycle has lengthened so much. And I think trepidation about the economy, just all the uncertainty, people are just not sure. So, you know, I have people rush. We need this. We're motivated. We want to work with you. But then it's like, oh, well, it's going to take us, you know, ages. And you think you're all there, and just that it's like almost crickets. So it's like, oh.
Yeah, you know what?
You know?
That has. It's funny that our Friday chat, Linda had brought that up. She brought a couple examples, got really, really close to the finish line, and like a lot more stressed out of consulting, and you know, some different activity, gain comfort and confidence in terms of moving forward. And then all of a sudden the business does a different direction. In her case, she does fractional, so took it internally. It took a different direction externally. So I can see that happening. But so from the operations side of things, there is for myself, like and maybe this goes with a lot of us that I think this would work with you, Ali and Henrik as well, and probably you too, Eden. Catherine, I imagine, like in talking and hearing what Callum says, maybe yes, maybe no. But for me, there's always got to be some kind of discover a period at the beginning of it. It's not always that clients come full and clear in terms of what their challenges are. You might be able to pull a few pain points out of them, and with a little bit of discussion, you can dig a little bit further about where you need to go. But you need to, for me, I need to lay out a foundation of, you know, okay, I need this, this, and this. Do they have these elements? If they don't, okay, there may be another problem, right? While trying to stick into the direction of what the client's trying to ask for. So I feel like I've always, so when you're talking to a group, and this whole conversation came up with a group of a networking group. So not somebody you're selling to necessarily, but a group that could potentially help with your sales from a referral perspective or collaboration perspective. And we went around the table and, you know, what do you do kind of thing, right? And that's where the one where Karen answered the real long answer. Like, you know, when you're around the table and somebody's looking, or obviously like Linda was in the room, she does a lot of networking. She was specifically asking for, you know, how do I refer you? Who do I refer you to? And how that conversation could change depending on who you're talking to, depending who's at the table, and depending how much time you want to take. That's always a bit of a struggle for me, and that's why I kind of threw that out there. But that can help or hinder that sales length as well. I don't know if you guys have struggled with the same thing.
Yeah,
Me, I do. Oh,
I sometimes I have to meet some people more than once to sort of really get what they do and who they're looking for, and it's not sort of only the general, like what they do in terms of like marketing or sales, but like what's the size of the client? What does the client look like? And that can take a little while to sort of get that clear in my head, and I think it get a little while for other people, for myself as well. So that's one challenge, why you should often meet people twice, or get sort of a clarity about who they're going to meet. Another point you mentioned there, Richard, is sort of is what you call like onboarding a client, because that's a term I hear quite a bit, and I'm a little. That's something I'd like to learn a little bit more about. You got the client, now let's make sure you get some wins fairly fast and get up. You know, you get all the ducks aligned, that kind of stuff, and I think some people do that quite well, and others probably don't. So I don't know if you have anyone has any thoughts on that.
Catherine, go ahead. You look like you're chomping at the bit.
I was gonna say we're also like having the opposite of that problem too, which is like how do we offboard better and upsell our services so that people remain after the project is done. So our operations problem is actually like the complete opposite of Henrik's, or the same but the other end.
When you say offboard, so that
What
couple
does that
things go in my mind. One, the client is too small and not fitting your ideal client profile, and you want to move them onto somebody else who's better suited for them. Or offboard, you're finishing a project and you're just trying to wrap it up and close it, get that final check. Is that that's the one you mean?
The second, yeah. Mm-hmm.
The second,
The first one's more like firing a client or terminating a relationship in a
That's
softer
how I
way.
would classify it too, yeah.
in the agency world, they often use the term offboarding to mean like getting like in the agencies I've worked at too.
I never even heard that. Okay.
We're offboarding, yeah.
Maybe it's more of a sales terminology. Like it's like, okay, we're going to try, like it's been a client, like, so you go in stages, you're growing, you're maybe a 5-man team. This client's ideal, maybe even big for you. And then you grow to a 10-man team. Now they may be right in the pocket or on the lower end. And then you grow a little bit further. It's like, okay, they're not like the type of dollars used to charge them aren't matching the needs of the agency, a bigger and type of projects you're getting, the expectations, how in terms of how the client's treated and you know, like you had one person really nurturing that relationship. And then as you grow as a team, that becomes one client among many and really not a high revenue earner. And then you're like, okay, maybe they don't fit the model anymore. That's where the term off. So you slowly either trying to upgrade them to the services that you're doing now and how you're doing it and the charges you're doing now, or you transition them out like without damaging the relationship ideally, right? So, but offboarding and onboarding. So this is interesting. I because Catherine, when Callum was on the other time talking about it, I mean, the type of products that you have, there's some nice elements that there's this recurring monthly aspect of it, right? Which is everybody, that's kind of like the golden egg right there, right? You predictable recurring revenue and whatnot. But then there's
golden egg.
Yeah, and then there's because Callum was talking about sprints. Can't remember the conversation we were talking about, but he came out and he was talking about a new way. We're talking about different business models that we're trying out now. And he talked about sprints, where we're just going to try and tackle one objective or one outcome that a client has. And a lot of it, it's, if I understood it correctly, a lot of it had to do with, a bit of onboarding the client, Henrik, in terms of the client doesn't know everything, but you don't want to take the time to fully educate the client before you need to start working, right? It's like, okay, where's the pain? It might be, okay, I got a new product, the sales are low or slumping. Got an old product, the sales are slumping. Okay, what does the sales cycle look like for that product? Okay, first we have discovery, then this happens, and there's typically like maybe a 3-week window or a 6-week window or 8-week longer window, and you guys put a sprint together to try and handle that challenge. But within that sprint, you're tackling a number of different things that might be separate services. And I might have got lost in a little bit in terms of calendar. Does that make sense? Or?
It's kind of the opposite. Like generally, also like the client's not deciding what the sprint is about. It's what we suggest, like is their biggest issue, but it's usually just like one part of the problem. So if like the biggest issues we see are on-page SEO, like their website's a mess, that the sprint would just deal with all the on-page things. And the point is basically kind of what Henrik said, is like quick wins, get them in, and then it's only a month. Because the other problem we find is that, especially since we do SEO, people get worried that like they're going to pay for the next 36 months for SEO or something. So this is kind of like a one fee, one deliverable, 1 month project.
So maybe the onboarding thing is more for true fractionals that are that are there for a while. So it's like an employee, except you're a fractional and you're meant to be.
I think
it's definitely somewhat on the service offering too, right? Like I know with us, we do an initial discovery when we're having a do we want to work with each other meeting, because we want to understand what they feel their biggest challenges are, and we also want to get a bit of a chemistry, a litmus test to see if we're going to work well together. So we have a 30 to 60 minute meeting, however long it takes, and then we have a part 2 where we review a contract with them, what we're proposing and ask questions, whatever. But then once they sign on the dotted line, we have an onboarding questionnaire that goes to them because, and Catherine's place in there, because we need access to certain things within their infrastructure to be able to do our work. So
Right.
there is an onboard, and I call that the onboarding. Although this morning I recognized when I heard back from a client we haven't worked with in over a year, and she was asking, what's my email client? She didn't know how to ask it, but she wanted to know what her email client was because they need to get some more email addresses. And I realized, you know, maybe we need to have a process for really offboarding these clients, because we don't usually we haven't needed to, but you know, some of them are a
That's
little,
what I do.
this one has no clue what her, that's what
I
you do, Ali?
That's
Oh, yeah, yeah.
like my job is to create processes for startups and scale-ups. So I've come across a lot of use cases. But to add to what we are discussing, something I read in school, like I don't know, like a decade ago, this theory of social influence, right? Back in the 50s, it came out. So there are 3 steps: compliance, identification, and internalization. So I use these for sales too, and it helps me understand the customer too. So compliance is more like the customer saying, "I'll say yes for now." So the customer agrees to buy or try something because of an incentive, right? Maybe like in a 2 weeks trial or something like that. You know, I'll give you a discount for the first meeting, some incentives, right? The second part, identification, is like when the customer is thinking, I like you and I want to be like you. So that's what Nike does, right? Sells the idea of sports, for example, right? There's an emotional connection. And I think that is the second level. Even in sales, the customer buys because they trust the salesperson, right? So that takes some time. And then the last step, which usually mostly leads to a closing of the sale, is called, from the theory, is called the internalization. So basically, this product or this service, it fits my values and beliefs. So once the customer reaches that point, I believe, you know, the sales is closed, the sales is done, and it's a recurring sales too. They're going to come back to you again and again. And I've been using that without knowing about it, but then I came across this again, and I revised it. So I noticed that people would come back. Like I know someone who came back to me after 2 years saying that, you know what, now I'm ready. So it depends on where the customer is to in this 3 levels of persuasion.
Yeah, I like that. So hello, Linda. How are you? Good to see you. We're spinning a conversation from a conversation that we started Friday, and you were reaching over, I think it was to Brian Lai, in terms of, you were asking a typical referral question, right? And we were talking about what do we share, and that kind of spun into another conversation. Like I could see with Henrik, it's like this onboarding. Like what do you move to a transaction? How do you move to conversations where you're getting deeper in terms of pains that you can solve? And I think with yours, Henrik, is like your onboarding is that you almost become an employee of that organization. So there's some trust elements, or even just establishing what that work relationship's going to be like. You know, are you going to be in the office? What elements are you going to tackle? Is it you even talked about in times? Are there people going to be reporting to you? Who are you reporting to? Who are you accountable? I don't know if that's some of the things that you're thinking about when you're talking about onboarding.
Yeah, I do, and I think it's sometimes, you know, anything financial is quite a bit of a trust issue, because it's, you know, when a company give away this financials, this sort of, you know, it's a financial striptease. You show them everything, and I find sometimes, even though they sort of sign on the dotted line and you are in fact engaged, they sometimes want to be a little bit careful about, you know, they take everything in sort of baby steps. Or some of them do anyway, and that can slow things down a little bit. Anyway, that's just one of all observations. So everyone is, you can ask for sort of everything up front, and some people will accede to that, and others will be a bit hesitant. So I imagine, all the fractional sales or fractional marketing, you can ask, especially if you're sort of managing a team, you need to meet everyone sort of fairly early on and be part of their meetings and sort of be really part of it. And that means, whoever hires you, they fully trust you right from the start. So anyway, that was some of the points.
Yeah, and so some of this conversation is reminding me of the other conversation we had about levers. And like, what's that first? What is that first? And this kind of goes back to the conversation of what do you share from a referral perspective? What's that first transaction you have that's going to be advantageous? It's going to set the bar in terms of what services you do. Because I find I can explain what I do, and I sometimes see a little fog go up in terms of people not fully getting it and not fully understanding the full term of it. And part of that is some terminology that's overused. So like, what's that first tool that's going to lead into the next tool to the next tool? You talked about discovery, Eden. You talked about auditing, Catherine. I know Linda has done workshops. Like let's pick a problem. Let's do a workshop. These are all feelers to try and develop some level of trust, because there's also even like, you may have not even talked about any cost, but there might be a presumption of what's this going to cost? How big is this thing going to be? And you're trying to, like, for me, in the back of my head, I'm trying to level set some, okay, we don't have to have a massive project to start, right? We can have some small projects that could have some early wins, and that, could be a lot less risky to get going on. That could add value to both. But what are those things, right? Like, because there could be a number of different things that you could put on the table there. Go ahead, Aidan. Did you have a? Yeah,
well, I also think, and maybe it's, I'm in a bit of a transition stage too with my business, and my hand is in 3 different things. So even to say this is the one thing we do, sometimes I'll simplify it and say this is what we do. Like I did at an event yesterday. Sometimes though, there's certain kind of ground floor things that you don't want to do for a client unless they can afford to pay that minimum amount to get you in the door to do something that's going to help them with whatever challenge they're coming to you for. So from my perspective, like sometimes we do retainer type work. So it's month to month. And so you don't know when a program is over to have that offboarding. Sometimes it's specific to a project. Sometimes if it's coaching, it can be a 1-hour session, that's start to finish. But at the same time, I'm not going to do certain activities for clients if they don't have a certain minimum budget. So I will ask that often before I even put a proposal together, because if I'm sensing that it's one thing to be cost or price sensitive. It's another thing for them to come to a company and think that you're going to charge them $20 an hour when you've had over 30 years of experience in your field. So I want to get that sense of what they have the appetite for before I even get to the proposal. And sometimes they BS me. Like I've had people get sticker shock, even though they say, I have $6,000 to spend. And I say, I have a $3,000 product that's going to give you what you need. And then they're like, oh, I don't want to spend money. I'm like, fine, but I'm not going to do that project for you for $999 either.
I think some of the challenges that I run into, and I totally get it. That service it's known. They would have bought that service before. That dollar figure they should have an understanding of what that dollar figure is. For mine, the client may do it once, then never again. They may do it once every 10 years or something like that. So like the likelihood of them having an understanding of what things are going to cost is pretty low for me. And that's in my own head, that sits in some trepidations, right? Like, how are they going to figure it out? So I feel compelled to do some math on their behalf. Okay, what's the pain that you're talking about? What's that cost in terms of your lost sales or lost opportunities? What would that look like if things were better? And like just try to do some math in there to put some kind of return of investment sort of thought in the conversation, because if I've identified a pain that they're having, it's probably going to be, it's got to be a big enough of pain for them to actually take action on it, or they get into the do-it-yourself mode. It's kind of like, what? I've got a fence. I got to put up, this is a terrible analogy. I got a fence to put up in my backyard, right? I can physically do it myself, but if I can get the right price and I don't have to do that sweat labor, I would certainly take it on. But I've got some barriers in terms of my do-it-yourself sort of thing. I think for a lot of times, clients will weigh against whether or not they move forward with a consultant or they do it themselves internally, right? Or they hire somebody to take care of that, and that's a permanent staff. So there's a little bit of learning curve for them to understand, well, how much they're going to spend, why they would spend that much, and for them to identify if it's even worth to move an opportunity to move forward, right? I get what you're saying, like. And I've definitely heard that in sales conversations where you want to float a couple. Well, a typical problem like this, clients have paid this or this or this. I wouldn't want to leave that hanging in there. I would want to say, okay, but that resulted in these changes happening or this pathway going forward. But I have to admit, those are tricky conversations for me. But I don't know if you have the same struggle, Ellie, or
basically it's about value-based pricing and project-based pricing. So project-based pricing, we know even the client has some idea because they have done it before. But the value-based pricing, you talk about the result, the effectiveness, how much ROI do you bring in, and the value of that would be the fee.
Yeah. Like one of the challenges that for myself, right? So I tend to focus around pinch points, right? So a client from 5 to 10, growing from 5 employees to 10 is a big step. From 10 to 20 is another step. From 20 to 50, like you have these little pinch points, right? And up until that point, you can satisfy busyness with just hiring new staff, getting them into. But then up to a point, that hiring new staff doesn't work anymore because the systems underneath them just start to fail, right? So I will weigh against, okay, do you really need to hire new staff? What's that worth to you? Or do you need to take that money invested in setting up the systems to handle the volume you have now and in excess of, maybe the next 10 hires or something like that, right? Depending whether they're at 5 to 10 or 10 to 20 or 50 to 100, right? So I'll try and weigh it against something else in their heads. I don't know, Henrik, do you have sort of similar challenges like that in terms of pricing things out? Is it well known in terms of what you should get paid? Is it like?
No, pricing is. I think it's always difficult. I've sort of I struggled with this for quite a while. I think it's. I've seen some pricing, so I'm pretty sort of confident what I can charge for a day, the range there, and so I'm pretty. So it's better now. I sort of know what I can do. Now, if it's a startup that simply doesn't have any money, I may adjust that, and I do work a little bit with startups. But I sort of know what sort of fractional CFOs ask for. So I don't think the price has gone up that much in these years. But anyway.
You don't think the price is, sorry, I didn't catch that last bit.
I don't think the price of general CFO services have gone up a lot in even the past 10 years. I think that's been pretty stable.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
You've got a pretty good handle on what, as a CPA, you're going to have a good handle on what your market value is that way and how,
Yeah, I should have, and I have that now, but for a long time I didn't. So now I have a pretty good handle what my daily rate is. Yeah, a pretty good handle.
We're bouncing around price, and it reminds me of this term this guy, sales coach, used to say a lot. It's like you price the client, right? And meaning you can offer the same and I think this would apply for everybody. Like a larger company is going to require that same service is going to be much more involved in terms of your time, and the value of success is going to be a lot higher. The cost of failure is going to be a lot higher. So the price to client. Have you So in your scenario, Eden, when you're going back to that, I want to throw that price out. What are you looking, when you're trying to evaluate the client, what are you looking for? Like I talked to a client recently, they shared how many employees they had, but that wasn't a great indication in terms of their size and where they fit within my scale.
I look at what they need, what they say they want to do, and look at it if it fits within what I feel is going to be strategic for them,
Right.
because I don't want to lead with tactics, and I can offer different things because I can do a CMO, fractional CMO role. I could just come in and provide strategic counsel, or I can actually do the work. So, and I give them options. So depending on the size of the client, I may just offer the service in a different way, and I can scale up. Like the starting point now on the marketing side is typically going with our digital roadmap or digital playbook or whatever we want to call it. And that was born out of a larger offering that was somewhere between the CDAP, let's say a CDAP plan, and what I'm offering now. It's, that was where I was before. And now I look and I say, if it's a very small business run by one person or something like that, I can give them a lot of value, but I want to make sure it's something that they can use and it's tangible. Sometimes it's harder to work with them because you have to go through and explain so much more.
Right.
And they feel like they're giving you their lifeblood. When you're working with a company that's a little more mature, sometimes you actually don't have to do as much, and you might be delivering more in terms of a report, but you're spending the same amount of time. So I look at that, but then I'll look and say, well, how much of a competitive analysis is mandatory for you? Or how big is your organization? Like I have a proposal out to somebody now that needs a CMO, but also needs some of the tactical implementation as well. And you'll hear more about that soon, because that's where a few other members of the B2B cohort are involved with me in that. And they have a corporation, they have their main voice, but they have 4 different regional offices that are quite different. So I've started on the strategy side, started with the roadmap, and then said for each region it's X. And they said to it, like, this is just an example. So they said to me, well, region 4 is brand new and we don't even have a footprint there for you to do an audit or analysis or anything. And I said, well, here's where I've done some thinking, and I actually would like to challenge that idea and say the culture in that place is very different. It's a different country than you've ever operated in before. It's a whole different part of the world. The way you appeal to people may be different, and the competitors are going to be new to you and they're going to be different. So I think we do have to invest that time, and they agreed. So it's just really understanding what the needs are, what you can offer, to how you can help, and what they have an appetite for. That's why I like to get a sense from them. I used to hate, and it might be a woman thing, and I don't want to be sexist, but I'm going to be, because I think it's harder for women, and I've seen this when I've partnered with men on business opportunities. It's harder for us to ask for money, and it's harder for us to get as much money as our male counterparts, even as independents. I mean, it's one thing when you say in the working world, women are paid 10 cents lower on the dollar. I'm talking, you and I can go out with the exact same offering to the same client. They're going to like us equally. They'll even opt to hire you more, even if it means paying them an extra $1,000 for the same service. Like, this is something we face a lot. So it may seem, surprising, but it is something that women face. So it's hard to ask for that money. I've become a lot more comfortable wanting to know what their budget is.
Yes.
Before I go past the initial introductory and discovery conversation. Before I go to write a proposal, I want to make sure that, there's at least a budget fit. They may not want to hire me, but at least I'm not wasting my time putting a proposal together. Even if it's for, a few hours of consulting, I want to make sure they know, my consulting rate for this type of work is X. This is what I do. If they say, oh no, we can't afford that, I'm like, okay, fine. I'll just walk away. Or if they say, what can you do for X? If I still feel it's within my wheelhouse, I'll say, well, I can give you this, but I'm scaling it down. This is what you can afford for that price. I'm not, will I charge not-for-profits a little bit differently? Sometimes. It depends on how much I feel I want to work, but I'm setting those boundaries.
Right.
That makes sense.
And just to add to what you said, I think conversation about women getting paid a bit less. So me and my wife had those discussions, and it's a real thing. It's a real thing. It's there in the market. And so we were talking about trust, right? And my wife, who works in board advisory and executive search, she told me about this book, and she gave it to me. It's called The Trusted
Advisor.
And her mentor actually gave it to her. So she passed it on to me. And this book talks a lot about trust, of course, because the name is trust, but on to how about different perspectives on trust, the structure of trust building, and then finally putting trust to work, getting that business development from trust. So it's a whole process. And I like this book a lot.
Is it the guy?
Yeah,
Is it the same book?
same book.
Different cover.
I looked it up.
David,
I'm taking notes of everything you guys are sharing so I
Yeah.
can put it in our sharing channel. But
Thank you, Richard.
no, I love it. I love it. So it's interesting. What about Catherine? Do you experience any of the same challenges? Do you price the client? Do you set the price? Do they set the price? And I was going to ask Eden as well. Maybe you can answer Eden, like budget. When you say budget, that's their amount they've got set aside for the project, right? That's what you mean by that. And what if the client, and I'll just share a little, like from the world, I do a lot of RFP writing and whatnot. And it's one of the, it's very rare that they'll share that budget. And you ask every single time. And a lot of times they're saying we're relying on the proponents and the advisors to dictate that or to share that with us. They don't know, or they don't want to share because they're worried, that somebody needs all that money.
Those big RFPs though they're in a different ballpark than a lot of the clients that we're bidding on directly, because they're not going to come to you with an RFP unless, depending, and you can find out what their parameters are. They're going to have at least a 5-figure, most likely close to a 6-figure budget before they're even putting that RFP out there.
It depends on where you're looking, but yeah, sometimes. But you could. They're
not going to have a $3,000 budget or a $5,000 budget.
No. You're right. It's at least a 5-figure for sure. Sorry, Catherine, I didn't even let you have a chance to answer.
Sorry.
But even we've had both big and small clients, and we get the same. It sounds like, Eden, you actually get an answer. I never get an answer is really the problem. I always ask. Asking that question doesn't bother me, but we either get the I don't have a budget, which is obviously a smaller company, or the we don't know what these services cost. And we go to a range. And I think that's really smart to go to a range, and then Richard's suggestion about this is the result you can expect from this range, because generally we do go to a range just because, again, we don't want to waste our time if they have not much money or can't afford whatever we want, but we can scale up or down. So I find this particular line very frustrating, because everyone does have a number. And if we could just if you told us, then we could either tell you, refer you to someone else that maybe is a better fit for your budget, or figure out if our services can scale down or up to fit into it. So definitely an issue.
What if they truly don't know it, and I guess one of the questions you can ask is, have you ever purchased a service before? If you have, what did you pay? What was the results? What were you expecting in your head? At what level is the challenge that you're having? I could have a lot of conversation about it, but I don't want to be the one presenting a number that's going to be way outside of what their expectations are, because then you got to do a lot of justification on it. Go ahead.
Well, I tell them I'll make a proposal to fit their budget. There's a couple things. First of all, 9 times out of 10, sorry, Catherine, when they tell me they're not sure, I get a lot of it. I'm not sure. I don't know. And sometimes I'll ask my next question, which I'll tell you in a sec. But I found the ones, even if they seem amazing and that their company likely can afford you, when they say we're not sure, we have no idea, we need you to tell us, and it's not an RFP situation like you've talked about, Richard, they usually do have an idea and they just don't want to share. No matter what you say, you're never going to get it. You're going to be out of the range. So that's one thing. I think also, Catherine, in your business, often it's easier, even though we both do marketing, we do different sides of it. Yep. And in my side, it's harder to talk about results, because especially so much of it is based on awareness as opposed to a hard number that relates to data. So it gets tricky. I can say I can finish X, Y, and Z for you. I can't say I'm going to get 10 more clients in the door unless I add a PPC component to it, for example.
I was going to bring that up too. It's kind of a full circle, because part of how we can also justify our costs is if your product is $1 million and we think that there's a good chance you might get like a number of leads and one would go through, it's pretty easy to justify our cost. And it's very easy to justify our cost for PPC ads. So yeah, it's grayer in your area, Eden. And I find that the grayest is ROI on social media and justifying ROI on social media. But
For sure.
yeah.
Haven't acquired those services.
That's why we don't do as
I think.
found,
we don't do as much.
But I was just going to say, having
Yeah.
acquired those services, I think it's the lack of tangibility and that really is challenging. Like I've seen people that do a whole lot of work. I've seen people that do a little bit and sit on it. So I think there's a lack of trust maybe that around and the fact that you can't tie to, and I would not tie to a lead in your case as well, because what if nothing happens? And there's a lot of elements on their side of the, is it a good product? Is it a good service? Is it well priced? They have a good sales team. Like,
Do
there's
they have a
lot of
sales team?
variables. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Henrik.
How are you selling
yeah.
this?
Yeah, no, I've learned. It's been quite a few years now. I will never write a proposal without discussing price first. It's so when the proposal comes, they will know what the price is, and what Eden said. If they don't want to talk to you, if they don't want to mention it, of course they have a number. They just don't want to give it to you, and you're. It's usually a red. I found it. It's a red flag. It's not a good prospect. If they don't, we don't know. We have no idea how much it's going to cost. Well, except in rare occasions, they always have a budget, and they just they don't want to pay. So if you can have the discussion up front about how much is it going to cost. Now sometimes they say yes, and it's actually not what their budget is. They say yes, well, X is our budget, but and then you quote X, and it turns out no, they don't want to pay that after all. But that happens. But
We've also done like three packages, so that like what we think they'll go in, we do as a middle package and then do a lower and a higher. Sometimes works. Sometimes doesn't work.
really
We
good.
do that too.
yeah, I've done that
We
too.
do that
They never
also.
go for the high package off the front.
No.
We've had one client.
Yeah.
do it.
The way I've been told to do that is you got your realistic, what you really want to get in the middle, a stripped down version in the end, and then an exorbitantly high one to kind of set. Yeah, exactly. To like, okay, this is everything under the sun. You just sit that, but it's really meant to set that middle price to give a context to it, right? So that's another one that Aaron, David C. Baker and Aaron Blair that talk about pricing strategy for creative. But Ali, were you going to say something earlier, or did I cut you off there? Or? No, if you weren't, no worries.
Well, one thing we did recently is we actually were able to reverse engineer. The client didn't know they knew what their total fee was for marketing services, and they were mostly paying for PPC, but the PPC wasn't giving them results. And they were way overpaying for their needs and way overpaying for the results they were getting. And there's no way they should have that in a paid media campaign, as Catherine can attest. So we found out what they were paying. We said, well, do you know what you're paying in services versus what you're paying in ad fees? Nope. Well, we were able to figure that out. So what we did was we have a foundational, you need to do all these things to get started, because they knew they had to make an investment up front. And we said, we can do, while we're doing, building your strategy and these other things, I'll toss in some fractional marketing advisory. So if it's outside of these boxes right now, and you need some things for your other service providers because you want me to help oversee them and guide them and be a liaison with you, I'll throw that in. But then for the monthly amounts, we took the services that are being offered by Spodek & Co. And it happened this way, but we were also able to tailor it and scope it so that it was the service amount that they were paying for their marketing services right now. And we said, okay, you're paying all this money for your PPC and you're not getting any of these other things. We can do all these other things for you for that same price. And it was fair to everybody. And their eyes just went like, you're going to do all this? Yes. They can't even get answers from their agency right now when they ask them questions. Like, yeah, Catherine's shaking there. We know. But I mean, that was it. I'll see how it goes, because that's still out. But we just were able to re-engineer and say, we can give you this value for the same amount of money.
Did you guys price on a percentage of media spending? Is that
Only, oh, did you ask Catherine?
no?
Do
I said you guys. So either one of you, do both, do either of you.
You can go, Eden. You're talking about it.
Well, I do way less of it than Catherine does. We used to be involved more. But however, the clients we have usually do relatively small buys. So it doesn't make sense to do
Yeah,
a
you
big
can't do it.
spend. When I've been
Yeah.
working on where there's a percentage, I'm usually working with a large creative agency where I've been subcontracted, and they'll bring in paid media, and they'll be, it'll be 5 to 6 figures a monthly spend.
Yeah.
I don't know about you,
Yeah.
Catherine.
We do one rate up to $10,000 and another rate from 10 to 30 and then another rate from 30 plus. That's how we've broken it up.
Yeah.
Instead of doing, we found it too complicated to try, like, especially as budgets change to, if they're spending 20 grand one month and 25 the next, to internally, our operations are not set up to account for those kinds
Yeah.
of fluctuations. We're too small.
Yeah.
So we've done these ranges.
That's interesting. We'll circle all the way back to onboarding, offboarding. So tell me a little bit more, the offboarding, what is it? Is this as a result of a project has a beginning and end date, and then there's just stuff that the client wants to keep doing, and you try to spin them into a recurring? Like, give me a little bit more on what that is.
Yeah. So I'd say probably 50% of our work is website design development. And so it's a very clear one deliverable, their website is launched. Ideally, then they would go into an SEO project, do PPC ads, do something else. Even sometimes we sell like a package of hours to just like do maintenance. We also do maintenance and hosting. So, there are a variety of things we could still do, but often they fall off there. I think websites are overwhelming to people. All our deliverables, for the most part, have timelines. Like even our SEO retainers are generally 6 to 9 months. We don't try to get people to sign more than 6 to 9 months because we don't want them to feel trapped. But the reverse of that is that like their projects generally are scaled down because they've had good results after that time. So I guess it's kind of screwing ourselves over in some ways.
Okay, so you get to the end of the 6 months, the website's built or whatever, like all the major
whatever's done.
All tech
Mhm.
SEO is done. All the, you've done some justification in terms of writing and helping them on page stuff. So the bulk of it's done. But do they want to keep going, or are they thinking, oh, now I have to move this money somewhere else? Or
I mean, that's a mixed bag. I think some of them think like, oh, I've spent my marketing dollars for the year. I could just kind of like, a website should be like a set it and forget it. SEO, I've done something. So like I could check that I've done something box. But I think also this is like an operations problem of we need to be more proactive about suggesting what should come next, because we were better and have fallen off to keep the clients, like, even if the capacity is just hosting, which is like a super low fee, at least then like we're top of mind when they need other things.
that makes sense. And onboarding, offboarding, Ali, any comments on that?
Yeah. So for me, I made like a 6-7 step offboarding process for myself and for my clients. So because I think it's very important for re-engagement, for your reputation, and for referrals, right? So there's a process, and I follow that. And through that process, I've been able to get more referrals, so there was a good, because you ended up with a very good note. So I'm looking forward to offboarding. Like, okay, this time would come, I'll make sure that this is the time when the customer adds value to you, not the other way around.
I like it. I tend to float into a project myself and try to, I don't know if maybe it's the same thing as you, Catherine, like you want to have it at beginning and end, or like you want to contain that or whatnot. But I could see where there is, where project's supposed to end in 6 months and then the client still wants to keep going. And then you're in that weird transition. Like, what comes next in terms of, is this a retainer? Is this a monthly? Do I start another project? Like how much do they need you hanging around? So I could see that being, there'd be kind of a foggy time. Okay, let's finish this one project and then maybe have another discovery about what happens next. I know a lot more about, or it could be even moving to a different side of the business, right? Okay, we've worked on this side. now we need to kind of like, what is lacking over on this side of the business, and where do we start? It's almost start a new project, new discovery, new layout, new timeline, and whatnot. So we're offering one and then onboarding the other. What are the main things? So Eden, you mentioned onboarding. What are the main things you need to tackle? Like obviously there's some like Catherine, access to website backend, hosting backend, access to channels, and everything else, right? What other things have to happen? What about payment terms? Go ahead, Eden.
Oh, that's I do that in a contract. So that's already taken care of. And it depends on what it is that we're offering. And so sometimes it's upfront, sometimes it's pay in full, sometimes it's spread out, sometimes it's month to month. And sometimes it's, if it's a web platform or a learning platform, well, which is web, we'll say it's half upfront, 30 or 40% at this milestone, and then the remaining 10 or 20, when it's delivered or whatever. It depends on the total size of the project and the length the project's going to take. But the other things we need to know is who are their ideal customers? What are their goals with this engagement? Do they have key messaging? Can they share them? Do they have a brand guideline? Just things like that. Who is the contact person for X, Y, and Z, depending on what it is that they're doing. Just that type of information so that we have it all and we can set up a file with everything we can access, the accounts we need to access, just so we get, we ask them, I'm just trying to remember, we also have an additional one. If they want to go in and do more of a branding exercise, then we have a piece that we can add on. If we're doing a website for them, there's another piece that we incorporate into it. So it really depends on what it is that we're offering to them, but it's an intake form, so that it makes, and we find a lot of them, it just gives them that opportunity to think about what they really want. And even if they've said it to us in discovery, some people, when they're reading it and thinking about it and writing about it, will come up with some additional things. What is it that you change? What is it that what is it you're happy with? What is it you want to change? And we try to keep it pretty simple. So we used to have a quite extensive one. When we scaled down our playbook, roadmap, whatever, we tried to scale the onboarding doc too, to go along with it, because we didn't want to overwhelm clients. So it also depends on the size of them and how, the type of engagement that we see.
Because you want to get going, and you don't want this to be an impediment to get going too. What about you, Linda?
Exactly.
Like you're more similar to Henrik's situation, like in terms of onboarding, what project you're starting. Is that written into the statement of work you're doing? Like what does yours look like?
My
And how does that
onboarding, you're
change?
talking about onboarding a new client?
Yeah, like we're transitioning to a client basically.
Yeah, such a great question. I would say that when I come in, really in leading a team, it's really about meeting with the people. Like it's about, meeting with the team. So having team meetings, having one-on-ones, meeting with the owner. And so for the most part, it's really, Kern is coming in and she's going to start working with the team, and here's what her role's going to be. And so they do an intro, and then I really start, I'm just going to think of one of the more recent ones I did last year. I really start, just having one-on-ones with everyone on the team, getting to know them personally, understanding, and just hearing them out, what they want to accomplish, because really I spend a great deal of time, like there's processes and systems, and people are, when people hire me, they think they are hiring like a full-time sales leader. So they're kind of like, I'm going to hire a full-time sales leader. She seems to fit. So we're going to put her in here and she'll just do what they do. It's not quite that simple, but it's similar to that, right? Because when you're interviewing as a full-time person, it's really, what do you know about this? And what do you know about that? And tell me about this and tell me about that. When I'm talking to people, it's like, well, can you give me an idea of how you would work with the team, how you would start, what it would look like in the first month, 90 days, 6 months, kind of thing. But what I know,
they're asking you that, right, Linda? Like what would it look like from their perspective? Okay.
Yeah. And I'm the one who says to them most of the time, what is the measure of success you're looking for? Like what is going to make this engagement successful? Because clearly we know we want sales growth. But that's not going to happen in the first 3 to 6 months, depending on the business, right? In the first 3 to 6 months, because I have to understand what the team is doing, how they're doing it, where the gaps are, the opportunities. And the team I had last year, it's actually one of my, it's as difficult as this team was to work with because the owner is really, really negative and feet on the table, hood up on his phone like a teenage boy during meetings. It was really, and I come with this corporate background, right? So I'm like, this is weird. But, and the team reflected that negativity. But you get somebody in there who cares about them, who wants to relate to them as people first. It took me a while because I started in July. There was a blowout with one of them in October, and then it was smooth sailing after that. Because what you're trying to do is get them to trust you, to build a relationship and that foundation of trust, so that they're like, okay, she wants me to do more of this or less of that. Okay, fair enough. She's listened to me. Like, they're not doing that consciously, right? But they're like building their trust and you know, and know that I care about them, and you know, we have some fun in meetings and stuff like that. And so I turned this person who like just blew up at me in October, just like lost her crap all over me. It was awful. You know, when I left at the end of January, because I think I was probably telling you, Eden, the company was too small to sustain me. You know, speaking of pricing, you said earlier, but I was actually okay to go because it's really hard. I had these great 4 salespeople that were really all on board now. I mean, even the old guy who said, you know, I'm 60, I'm comfortable, I make a good living, I don't want to do anything differently. You know, even he started doing things differently, he was actually doing the best. He just started doing more of it. But the one who really went kicking and screaming that we had the blowout, she was like, it's a business where they could sell the same day, like a B2C type business, which I don't normally do. But, you know, she started selling 3 a day. One day she sold 3 things in one day. And and she would never do that before. She was like this artiste and all this kind of stuff. So anyway, that was a big feather in my cap because that's what it's all about. It's all about changing behavior of people who don't necessarily, I mean, people who want to, you're just helping them. You're just supporting their success. And that's fun. That's really fun for me to find my match, you know, ambitious, driven, hardworking. But these harder teams, you know, we want to influence them. And I remember him saying to me, and then I'll stop, Richard. And I remember him saying to me, I said, oh, man, so-and-so is really hard to influence. He goes, influence, just make her do it. And I'm like, well, how's that working for you? How is that working for you, buddy?
It's almost like your onboarding has access to staff. Okay, I'm gonna these staff I'm gonna be interfacing with these staff. They need to be okay with it because you're a new face on the team. They don't know how you fit into the whole overall hierarchy of things.
I'm gonna be their boss.
Yeah. So that's got to be clear. This person, you're reporting up to this person. What does that mean? Is there a performance review impacted by that? Like, there's a lot that you got to kind of lay out. And I don't know if the same with you, Henrik, and it's kind of the last few minutes here. Is there access to staff? Is there expectations? Is there impact on, like, that you have to deal with from a change management perspective because now you're coming in and building into that organization?
Did they report to you, Henrik, or do you work in isolation?
Well, it's changed a little bit, or my understanding of it has changed. So I don't really want to work in companies that are big enough that I have a team of 7. They are not going to be my target clients. So the ones I work best with are where it's basically like a good bookkeeper and myself. So there's some controllership activities that I do. But the best relationship is if I have a very good relationship both with the owner and with the bookkeeper, and the bookkeeper may not technically sort of report to me, but he or she, usually she, sort of has a good working relationship with me. The worst is if I've had examples where there's kind of like an outside bookkeeping service, and they have a contract with the owner, and that has caused me some difficulty in the past, because I sort of have them to work for me, but they sort of do their own thing, and I had one client where it just didn't work out. But often it works out to have a good relationship with the bookkeeper, and there's other if it's a controller and it's a fairly small company, they often feel that I'm stepping on their toes, even though I'm not. So it's a little bit of for me, it's sort of a boundaries. What do I do?
Establishing boundaries with
Establishing boundaries. And for me, it's also accessing information. Like I need to sort of get information fairly soon and fairly complete. Otherwise, I'm just going to sit there and spin my wheels, and that requires some trust.
I like that. So it's just to summarize it. I think we bounced around a bit, but it sounded like a lot of it on the onboard. Like, how's that relationship start? What are the things you need to establish a good relationship? Ian's got a really good documented process. He's obviously done that quite a bit. Others, it can be like myself. I could see it can be a bit more. I got to figure that out. And that can be part of that discovery process in terms of who you're going to work with, who's going to be impacting that. What is your visibility going to be? What access do you need to information? What's the close date? What does close look like? What does the expectations look like? Is it a quarterly check-in? All these different things that need to kind of be a part of that. And I guess a lot of that, when you're having those initial conversations, depending on how much you've got that worked out, it can add a lot more confidence in terms of like, oh, okay, they've done this a lot. They've got the whole process standardized. I can see the path from here to the end of the path. And as Ali suggested, there are defined steps to the offboard as well as the onboard.
Right.
So this is good, guys. I appreciate it. I've got a couple of things that I took note on in terms of what I'll share into the sharing thread, in terms of the books and what was the definition of social influence and whatnot that you shared. Ali, appreciate that, guys. And we'll see you guys hopefully next Tuesday, which is our networking group. We did, it was a lot of fun last night. We did breakout rooms and whatnot. It's all about getting to know each other better and getting to know what we do a little bit better. And then also a little bit of practice in terms of explaining what you do to different people of varying influence and varying, motivation in terms of how much they need to know about what you're doing. So, all right, guys.
And
go ahead, Ian.
I was just to say, quick final word, mostly, to you, Catherine. I was this many years old when I put 2 and 2 together and figured out Callum was your other half, or his better half, and we were matched together in the cohort. So we're meeting, I think, next week.
Yeah, but he actually on the reverse hadn't figured out that we had spoken a bunch of times, Eden, and he's heard about you. So he didn't figure it out either.
I had my matchup with Callum. I think it was my last one. It was good. It was good. Good long conversation. So how are you guys enjoying the matchup? So far, so good. You haven't had it yet, Ali. Did you sign up for matchups?
I haven't checked yet.
I have my first tomorrow, so we'll see.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So Ali, in the back end, I think if you hit your picture, there's something called matchups. You can figure how frequently you want to do it: weekly, bi-weekly,
Just saw
monthly.
this.
Yeah, and it automatically sets you up with somebody in the group for a one-on-one. It forces you to have those one-on-ones, which I found super helpful for myself.
Thank you.
All right.
Great.
Okay, guys. We'll see you Tuesday, hopefully.
Thanks,
Okay.
Mitch.
Bye.
Bye now.
Tomorrow, Richard.
Oh, yes.
Bye.
See you tomorrow. Ian. Bye.